The British public were told that leaving the EU would free the UK to secure free trade deals around the world with countries like India. But did your government oversell how easy it would be to do those deals?
I think we expressed it exactly as you have, which is there's an opportunity, but opportunities have got to be grasped. One of the great things that I've been able to talk through with the Prime Minister today and with Dr. Jaishankar, the Foreign Minister, yesterday, was the, if you like, the roadmap, the milestones to liberalising and deepening our trade in the interests of both Indian and British businesses and consumers. Of course, free trade negotiations are always a haggle. We'd expect on both sides that to take place. But if we look at the joint mutual benefits over a 10, 20, 30-year period, not just 2-3 months, they're enormous.
A free trade agreement with India won't happen overnight. I mean, it could take as long as a decade.
A free trade agreement is really important, and there are milestones to reaching that. Sometimes it can take as long as you suggested, but I think with political will, and my sense is on the UK side, but also on the Indian side, there is the political will, and with the right leadership on both sides, which I know is there, we could drive it forward much, much quicker than that.
Okay, let's move on to the issue of democratic values. International human rights groups are gravely concerned that Indian government policies have put minority groups, especially Muslims, under increasing pressure. We're talking about brutal crackdowns against the government's critics, arbitrary detentions, internet shutdowns, increased media censorship, and a decline in press freedom. How much does that concern you?
Well, first of all, I think big picture context, India is the biggest democracy in the world. It has a vibrant culture of debate, protest. We've seen that recently, and in many ways is an example to the world. Of course, there are always cases of human rights issues. We know about them. They reported to me. We've got domestic constituents that raise them with us. I have a candid conversation with officials in the Indian government. I've spoke to Dr. Jaishankar about it this week. But equally, we recognise that the democratic depth and breadth of India is pretty much unrivaled in this region. I think it's important to set it against that context.
You've just come from meeting Prime Minister Modi. Did you raise any of these concerns with him?
Well, I've raised on my trip, as you'd expect, human rights issues and concerns. That's my job. Equally, at a professional level, you'd expect that to take place. I discussed them with Foreign Minister Jaishankar. I discussed them with Foreign Minister Jaishankar yesterday, and of course we'll continue to raise those issues.
If it hasn't been raised with the Prime Minister, one might say, is that because it's a sensitive issue to bring up when you're trying to strike a trade deal with India?
With a close friend and a partner, I think actually you can have candid conversations about difficult issues between you, and we won't shrink from doing that. Equally, we wouldn't allow that to eclipse the broader cooperation and bilateral relationship, because there are huge opportunities, but we don't duck the difficult issues.
There's been a cross-party group of MPs who've called on you to raise the issue of the ongoing farmers' protests. What is your message to the British Indians who are concerned about what's happening in these protests? And did you raise this with the Prime Minister today?
No, I didn't raise it. It's something that I discussed with Foreign Minister Jaishankar, but in the context, of course, of the reforms that the Indian government are trying to pass. That's a domestic political issue. Of course, we understand that there are different groups that disagree with that. As we were discussing earlier, India has a tradition of noisy debate, which is quite right. That shows you the health of the democracy, and ultimately those are matters politically for discussion within India and its democratic framework. But I did have a good conversation update with Dr. Jaishankar about that.